In California, the troubling crisis of homelessness has grown even worse amid the pandemic, leaving cities to rethink how they approach the issue. The mayor of California's capital city recently proposed a right to housing, which, if passed, would legally require his city to provide housing to those experiencing homelessness.
And joining us now is the mayor of Sacramento, California, Darrell Steinberg. Mayor Steinberg, thank you for being with us. And I know you're someone, you have studied this problem of homelessness now for a very long time. So give us a real sense, if you can, of just how bad the homeless problem is in your city.
Well, thank you for having me, Amy and TJ. The problem is a very serious one, as it is throughout California. And I think it's first important to say that Governor Newsom and the legislature, they've actually done a great job providing real resources to our cities. They led the effort to convert many vacated motels and hotels into housing for the homeless. In the thousands, in the tens of thousands. But the problem still gets worse. And what I believe is that even with the unprecedented level of resources, that until we change the law, that the problem is going to continue to grow worse. Housing is a fundamental right. It's a moral right, but it needs to become a legal right if we're going to drive all of our systems towards doing even better and getting more people off the streets.
Well, Mr. Mayor, how does it work? Because some cities, New York in particular, here there is a right to shelter. So how does a right to housing there differ? Where are you putting folks? Where are these shelters? Do they need to be built? How much does it cost?
Well, a right to housing is the umbrella, and certainly shelter has to be part of a right to housing, especially for people who are chronically homeless, who may not be ready for permanent housing because of their mental health issues or substance abuse issues or other conditions. How does it work? We would drive ourselves as a city, the city of Sacramento, the capital city, to get everybody indoors, whether it's through congregate shelters, tiny homes, through permanent supportive housing. We're getting thousands of people off, but I want not just our city, but our region and our state to drive even harder. How much would it cost? It does cost money to house people, but guess what? We are spending more than that amount of money on emergency care in our hospital emergency rooms, in law enforcement costs, and trying to clean up tent encampments, and the public health costs. Here's the fact. People who are chronically homeless live on average 25 years less than people who are sheltered and housed. Why isn't housing not just a human right, but a legal right? We are outraged by people suffering, and of course our business communities and our neighborhoods are suffering as well. When it matters, we require it in society. And so I believe that you're never going to need enforcement of a legal right to housing if you do it right, because the legal right itself is going to push all the disparate systems, the cities, the counties, the health system, sometimes that act separately and work separately, to work closer together, to consolidate the resources and to drive towards a better result.
Mayor, you mentioned that you don't think there'd be a need to enforce it because it is important to note under your right to housing proposal, those who are experiencing homelessness would be required to accept any housing or shelter offered to them. But yes, you and I both know, as do many people, not everyone will want to do or go where they're told to go. So there will be some sort of enforcement involved, yes?
Well, so this is the way this would work. First of all, there's two parts of my proposal. One is a legal right to housing, and the other, as you acknowledge, is a legal obligation to take it if offered. But it's all sequential, because first the government has the obligation to provide the capacity so that we can offer people safe and dignified alternatives to living in squalid tent encampments. And yes, I believe that once we can offer somebody a safe and dignified alternative, that they have to come indoors. And what's the remedy? We're never going to criminalize homelessness, nor should we. But it means you can't camp where you're camping now, because that isn't good for the person who's living out in the elements, but it's also not good for the community. I said in my State of the City speech 2 weeks ago that we can both help people, which is the first obligation of government, and we can also achieve a cleaner and safer city. And that's true for all cities throughout the country. But it starts with requiring on both ends what we know is essential. Otherwise, what's the alternative? The alternative is that people living outdoors in cold weather, in the cold of winter, in the heat of summer, people dying, people living less, obviously, in ways that are very unhealthy and that are unsafe. And I think as a society we can do better. Let's go back to President Roosevelt, 77 years ago. A right to housing. If there's a right to public education, if there's a right to health care, if there's a right to care for people who are the most vulnerable among us, we should be bringing people in, not just as a matter of morality, but as a matter of the law.
Mr. Mayor, a lot of eyes going to be on your city. A lot of people think you all could set a standard for other cities to follow. So we appreciate you being here. Hope to see you down the road. All right, Sacramento Mayor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.